Right guys, so in this video now we're at the stage where we need to replace the old plywood floor in the van for a new one so we can carry on with the build. So this is in a Citroen Relay long wheelbase, so if you want to know what's involved then carry on, watch the video. It might be a bit long-winded but it gives you some idea of what you need to do if you're going to build a van yourself from scratch. So let's go ahead, let's take a look. So now it's time to tackle the plywood floor in here and replace it with a new one and put the battens underneath and the Celotex underneath that. So this floor is not in terrible shape considering, but so I've just been using it to work off of for the time being to do a bit of insulation and put the vents in the roof, things like that, save walking around on the new one. But now's the time when it comes to building, obviously you've got to build off of the floor, so you've got to replace it to start building off of the floor. So I have already taken a few screws out, as you can see, all of which are rusty that came out. What I've used is just a driver to take them out. Just make sure you got the right bit on there, otherwise you just end up rounding them off if not. Now with this floor you can use this as a template for the new one. What I've done is gone round in certain areas there where it can be a bit tighter, just put some masking tape round there, so as I know for the new one you can cut them just that little bit tighter to it if possible, instead of having such a big gap around it like that one there, for instance. That gap, you can just tighten that up a little bit. So I'll mark that with some masking tape before I go ahead and lift it completely, and then just in case of taking the strips off in the side loading door and the rear door there, might keep hold of those for the time being. But I would say you can use this old floor as a template for the new one, and then it's just a case of filling in the screw holes underneath and having a look, see if there's any rust patches or anything like that might need attention. So also we have to take out the load eyes in the floor, so that's just a T30 Torx bit for those. We get those undone all the way around. So there's the eyes out the floor. While I was at it I just took the same, this T30 Torx for the ones on the sides of the van as well. So these in your van, depends really, they could be rusty on the thread that goes in the floor like that, so they might be very tight to get undone. So really you want a decent Allen key, a decent Torx socket, maybe even a 1/2 inch one with a bar on it to undo them. And you can always soak them as well with some spray. Try and get some spray underneath them before you try and remove these, just to help the ones in the floor, because they go through and obviously the moisture from underneath corrodes the thread in the floor. So that's those ones out of there. Now there is two in the bottom of the bulkhead to do as well, so we get them out when we're doing the bulkhead, and that's all of those out. So what I do is give the floor a little bit of a sweep over first before we go and pick it up, just to clean it off, and it saves tipping it all in the actual van itself. So hopefully it should be a case of just lifting this floor up and see what we got underneath. typically I forgot a screw. So this plywood is also stuck down with a bit of silicone as well on the floor, and believe me, it takes some pulling up. You wouldn't even need screws in it, it's down that well. I don't even know why they bother putting screws in it for. Could have just sealed it down, it's that good, the sealant. In fact, it's that good I've got a job to pull it up. So last bit of the front to take up. Forgotten a screw again. So there we have the bare floor as it is. Needs a good sweep and a hoover. Inherited drill bit there as well. Plenty of stones and bits underneath the front of it. That's for rust on the floor. Can't really see any. Looks like somebody's had quite a few attempts at putting a screw in that piece of ply. All those screw holes just from that one screw that someone's put in. 2, 4, 6, 7 screws just to put that one piece down. And there, all those holes. That rust there is just from that nail. It's under the floor. But other than that, looks pretty good, apart from just filling in the screw holes, putting some paint over them, treating them first before we fill those in. Other than that, it's rust free. So what I've had to do is go over the floor and scrape off all that silicone that was on the high spots, because when I have to stick the battens down, then all that old silicone obviously interfere with the new adhesive, so we've got to scrape that up off there. All I've used is a plastic window ice scraper. That way it doesn't scratch all the paint off, because it's not metal. So that's quite handy for scraping it. So I have to sweep this up and then go over it again, possibly. So there's the silicone removed off of the floor. So give it a hoover around and give it a wipe and see what if anything needs a bit of treatment on it. So now we've wiped over the floor, what I'm going to do is these screw holes where they've punctured through, what I'm going to do is, with those, is put some rust treatment, a bit of paint over these just to protect them before sealing them up or anything like that. Any light rust areas, a lot of this will just come off with polish, these little dots, rust coloured dots. So what I'll do is use some abrasive polish and clean them up first and see if they need any touch up over them. Then I'm not going to bother touching them up when they look like that. I'll just polish them with some compound, just get them off and then take a look at it after that. But any ones obvious holes like that where they put all those screw holes, I'll touch all them up first, and same with any of the other holes that was holding the plywood down, I'll go over those. So now the paint's had a chance to go off overnight, so I just painted over the rusty bits where the holes are and everything, and around the where the lashing points went in to the floor. So now it's had a chance to dry. All I'm going to do is seal these with just some contact adhesive in all the holes. Now the reason I'll be using that is because it's flexible and it just stays flexible. You can use like say a chemical metal in there where you mix the two parts together and put in the hole, but that stuff isn't flexible. So the reason I'm just going to use some adhesive is just it's flexible, so it should stay in there without coming out, obviously as the van moves around, etc. So I'm just going to go around and fill every single one of them. So when you're happy with the condition of your floor, you've treated any rust, filled any holes, what you can do then is we're just going to batten it out. So basically just make a grid. Obviously the batten sits on these high points of the floor and across these ridges, and the batten's 25mm thick, so you've got 25mm insulation board going in between the battens. So this is 25 by 50, so 25mm by 50. This is that's roofing batten, so treated. So if you go to your builders merchants, it's the best place to buy that from in lengths. A lot of builders merchants also keep that inside anyway. It's not always outside stacked up, so it's getting wet. Where I got this from, it's all stacked inside anyway, so it's bone dry. It comes in this colour, and it also comes in blue as well, the blue colour, so you might see it in blue. So we just basically make a grid of that. So I've gone one long piece here, for instance, like that, right through to the wheel arch there, and then I'm just going to fill this in across the van basically, bit by bit, and just go across. And you want to measure it, obviously, so your Celotex sits in it. Obviously the main foot traffic is going to be inside the door area. Depending on, say, where your kitchen's going to come to, you might want to put a bit extra in here, but I'm just going to go across with them anyway. Probably about 400mm, say, something like that. I haven't decided yet, but what you got to remember is when you're going across with them is, say you've got a hole for your diesel heater like half there, and maybe your shower later on, so you don't want to put a batten exactly where the hole's going to be if you haven't drilled one yet, for instance. So just bear that in mind. Obviously I've already drilled the hole so I can avoid it with when I'm doing the batten and everything. So, and also if you know where your furniture and things is going to go, like your shower tray, things like that, your cabinets for your kitchen here, whatever you've got going in, then you can obviously measure where your kitchen's going to finish, and then you can put a batten underneath there, bits of batten in, so you know you've got something to fix down to through your floor, just to help it in case you want to put some bigger screws in. You know you've got something under there to fix to, and the same like around your shower area and things like that, just in case you want to put some good fixings in. So what I've done is I've already stuck the one at the front there, and the one inside the door goes all the way along there. I've already stuck that down with some sealant so that it can be going off while you're working your way back down the van, because that way it's all going off as you're working along. It goes off quite quick, especially in the warmer weather. So before you stick one down, see I've got this one here, as you see all I've done is placed it on the floor and then just marked it, so there's a 400 gap between here and this one, 400 mil, and then just hold it in place, just measure it in a couple of places, make sure it's 400 all the way in square, and then get a marker pen, just mark on the high bits like that, so you know where it's going to go, so you know where it's going to sit, so therefore you know where you want to put your blobs of adhesive down. If there isn't any there, just put a big blob like there where it's going to miss one, put a big blob just in the centre there, and then just put a blob on each one like that. So I'll do that all the way along before I stick it down. So as you see there, I've just got some blobs adhesive down like that, and it's just a case of obviously picking your batten up and just resting it on top of them and just gently push it down, because you don't want to crush it right down too hard. Just gently push on it just to squeeze a little bit out and then leave it at that. So that's the battens done across the width of the van, and just this one along the edge of the door here. That's not going to be the finished edge of the door. Obviously you can see it just sits up on that raised bump there. You've got a gap here. What I'll do is put a nice finishing piece of timber in that gap here, right, that runs right up to the edge there, so it won't be this just so rough sawn timber. You want a nice piece to finish that off there. So once you've done them, then obviously what you want to do is put some across. So see, it's 400 that way, like that. So if you cut a piece, obviously you know it's 400 wide, bit of wood. So then you just offer it up, that's 400 there to there. So that's 400 square, that's a square of 400. That's just sitting there like that. So you put some adhesive on that bump there, and then just sit that in. And then after you just put it down on the adhesive, then get your tape again, just check that it's 400 like that. And then you can do the same thing across. And then, like I said earlier, if you know where anything's going to go, you can always put extra battens in where you know where you think your kitchen's going to be, or you need some extra ones in the door, for instance. You could do it different. You could make it smaller if you want to so you got extra strength, but 400 should be plenty. It's only foot traffic in there. Once the ply's on top of this, the whole thing's not going to move anywhere anyway once the ply's down. So there's all the infill pieces put in to make basically just like a grid on the floor. So that's how it looks now. So these have had a chance to go off, the battens have gone off now, and literally you cannot pull them up. I'm pulling on that, and that's how hard they are, stuck down. So you definitely don't need any screws, that's for sure. So now what we've got to do, now that's all gone off and everything, like I said earlier, this piece isn't the finished one. We have a different piece on here. Obviously you can put something better in there because the floor this kicks up a bit on the edge as well, so you can put a different piece of timber in there, not sawn wood like that. What I've done is just marked on the edge there, just put a line there where the centre is of that, just in case you need to know where the centre is of anything later on if you want to put some plywood down and put the screws in, just so you know. And then you can do the same thing on the other side, you could just put a little mark there, for instance, and there, so you know where the middle of that is when your plywood's down, just for a reference. The other thing is with the same with the back door, I put a piece across there like that, but the plywood finish, you can either have the finish there, or you can just again have another piece of wood in here up to that line there. There's a bump on the floor there, so you can stop it there in this bit here, so you can put a nice looking piece of wood in there if you're going to finish it with it, so when you see the end of it you're not looking at this sawn timber. Or you can have a trim that goes over, so obviously like it had when the plywood floor had a piece of trim, so you can have an angled piece of trim over the end. Whatever piece of wood you want in there, you can obviously paint it and then put a trim over the top of it just to make it look better on the finish than this rough sawn wood. So that's how it turned out. So what we got to do now is I've just cut a few pieces, just put in there of the insulation board, so that just literally drops in there like that, and then it's flush, it's almost flush with the battens basically, and then all you do is foil tape over here across there. So it's just a case of go round. Obviously those are 400 square, so we know what they were, just 400 square, and drop them in. So here's the insulation board we're going to be using. So it just comes in, it's 25mm thick, it comes in 8-foot sheets. So if you get this from your builders merchants, you can always get them to deliver your materials as well to you. You don't even have to go and pick them up, you just go in, look at them, get them to deliver them. If say you've got your van already being built and you don't want to go and pick it up in your own van, you know, you can get them to deliver it. This, you know, there's various makes of this available, and to cut this you can just use a normal saw, a wood saw, hand saw, and just cut it. That cuts through it easily, just literally falls through it. Or you can use any sort of serrated knife, like an old bread knife or something like that, to cut it with. You can mark it with a Stanley knife to put a mark on it, because it marks very easy. You can mark it with your own nail, you know. So it's very easy to cut, and so it's very easy to mark as well. You can just get a, you know, get your tape measure out and just mark it with a Sharpie if you have to, just to put a mark on it. I'll say if you knew it was 400, for instance, then you could just cut a 400 piece all the way down 400 if you knew everyone was going to be exactly right. But you find it's probably better just to measure each individual square that you've done on the floor and then cut this to suit, because that timber, that rough sawn timber, you find, you know, it's not dead perfect, because it can be slightly bowed, or, you know, whatever. So you find it's probably better just to measure, because you might need one just a couple of mil smaller than another one, you know, so it fits in there nice. So as you can see, we've cut the pieces of insulation to fit, put them in position, and then what we started to do is just go over all the joints with the foil tape, aluminium tape. So you just go over that and just cover all your joints up. So we've got all the foil tape down on the floor now, over the wood and the insulation there. So what we've got to do now is cut the plywood, the 12mm plywood for the floor. So what I did was, obviously when I took the old plywood floor out, the original one that was straight onto the metal, I kept that floor as a template to cut, to use to lay on top of the new sheets of ply, and just draw around them, and I use them as a template Now I can just cut out the new sheets and hopefully they'll fit in here. Obviously, like I showed earlier, you can just mark if there's anywhere that, say, your sheets aren't particularly close to anywhere. You can always add a bit on where necessary to make it a bit of a tighter fit. But what you've got to remember is the walls are going to come down anyway and go over the ply, so you never see the edge of it anyway. Most of nearly everywhere in the van you can only walk down a piece here and out to the door. That's about the only bit you're ever going to see. The rest of it's kitchen, shower, everything else you don't see it. So it's all going to mainly be covered over completely. So it doesn't matter if it doesn't go right up to the very edge, because you're never going to see it once the walls are in. So there's the 12mm ply in place. So that's one sheet here, another sheet there, and another sheet there for the plywood. So all I'll do now is go around and put some screws in it, just hold it down. So how I know where, obviously where everything is under the floor, is around the edges. I just marked it with a Sharpie where each one goes to, and on this side as well, and on the back and on the front. So all I do now is just lay a piece of wood across from one mark to the other, and then just draw a line on there, lay that on there like that, draw a line with a pencil on there, and then you know where that piece of batten is under the floor. Then you can put your screws through into it, and same all the way down like that, then you know where they all are. So we've got the screws in the floor now, as you can see. Just hold it down, we'll see into the battens that you put down earlier. So they're all in there now. What you can do is, if you're worried about feeling these screws where you're going to be walking on the floor through whatever covering you're going to have on it, you can always put some just a light skim of filler over those where you're going to be stood, which isn't on a lot of the floor really, but you can always fill them if you want to. The same as you could fill any of the gaps between your plywood. If you weren't happy with the joints, you can always put a little bit of filler over them. If you was worried about if you had a joint where you was going to be walking, then you could always just put a light skim over there, some wood filler if you had to. But the next step is the actual flooring over the whole thing, the lino over it, over the whole floor. Well, there's nothing in here, so everything will be covered with that in one go. So here we have the roll of lino for the floor, for the finish. So I'm just going to do the whole floor with it basically. So that's a 1.8 metre roll and 4 metres long. So 1.8 metres is basically the right width that you need, and all I'm going to do is roll this out a good side down, so upside down basically. And then the old floor that was in the van originally, what I used as a template to cut the new plywood floor, I'm going to use that old floor. All I'm going to do is lay that on top of this and then mark round it with a Sharpie, and then use that, and then I can cut out from there instead of trying to do it in the van, because these rolls, if anyone's lifted a roll of this, is heavy, so it saves trying to roll that out in the van and trying to cut round it with a standing knife and all that, when I can just use the old floor as a template. So I'll lay it on top of it and then I'll show you it. So there we've got the old floor laid on top of it like that. So all we've got to do is draw around it, the arches there with a Sharpie, and then we can mark along the edge of it, same again round there. Like I said, it's basically the right width, so the edge just going inside the door that you'll see when you open the sliding door, you want that touching there like that, so as you know that edge is right. You've only got a little bit to cut off, but you can always leave it slightly long and then trim it in the van just to make sure that you've got enough. So there we have the shape cut out, as you can see, so it's ready to roll it back up. and then unroll it the other way up in the van. So there's the lino installed. So all I did to stick it down was just use some of the high temperature carpet glue, what you use for your carpet, etc. That glue, spray glue. So sprayed it on both surfaces and just put it down with that. I mean, the flooring itself is heavy on its own, but still stuck it down because you don't want it moving or riding up or anything over time, especially near the door edges, things like that, just where you're going to walk mainly. Stuck it down there, so that's all installed in there. So that's the finish on it, so the sparkle type finish. Right guys, so I hope you found the video helpful for your van build. If you did, remember to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for more van build content coming along the line. Until the next one, see you then.